a vessel built to conquer the most violent oceans on Earth, was perfectly preserved by absolute silence. And heavy, suffocating blue clay. Welcome to the Oseberg burial mound, where time stopped completely in the autumn of 834 AD, leaving everything frozen in the dark, deep beneath the Norwegian soil. A king or queen was laid to rest, not in a tomb of stone, but within a wooden leviathan. According to the 1,904 excavation logs of Gabriel Gustafsson, a dense layer of blue clay completely enveloped the hull, forging a flawless anaerobic seal. This lack of oxygen halted decay, freezing the overlapping oak strakes exactly as they were. Over a millennium ago. Look closely at the rusted iron rivets, piercing through the dark timber. They have oxidized slowly, weeping iron into the damp earth. The surface of the wood still holds the faint indentations of adze tools wielded by master shipbuilders. Long before the Viking Age ended, measurements of the Gokstad ship revealed 8 meters of solid oak, built to flex with the ocean. Now crushed by the heavy earth, the mast, once holding a heavy square sail that caught the freezing northern winds, now lies broken and resting horizontally in the dirt. Around the ship, the crushed remains of an intricate burial chamber, splintered under the immense weight of rocks and soil over the centuries. Dendrochronological analysis conducted in 1992 confirmed the ship timber was actually felled in the damp autumn of 820 AD. Remaining silent ever since. In the absolute darkness of the subterranean mound, roots from ancient trees above slowly pierced the ceiling, reaching down toward the sleeping hull. Fragments of woven wool and delicate red silk dye, imported from distant lands, survived against all odds in the quiet, cold blue clay. The silence here is heavy, mimicking the deep stages of delta sleep, where your own body repairs itself in perfect, undisturbed stillness. As we descend deeper into the excavation trench, let the weight of the earth press gently against your racing thoughts, pulling them into rest. Notice the heavy iron anchor ring, completely encrusted with layers of oxidized soil, a tool forged to bite into the seabed, now biting dirt, deep in the chamber. The Oseberg wagon reveals three-dimensional carvings of mythical beasts, barely illuminated by the faint glow of our lamps. Rows of empty oar holes line the upper strakes, once manned by 32 warriors rowing in perfect unison, now filled only with quiet shadows. According to the University of Oslo's osteological report, 15 horses and 6 dogs were sacrificed here, their bones now fragile and porous in the darkness. Look at the microscopic gaps between the planks. Sticky pine tar residue remains completely fossilized. sealing out the freezing ocean 1,000 years ago. A fragile wooden bucket rests near the stern, its iron hoops heavily corroded, holding nothing but the slow, inevitable accumulation of time and dust. The curved ribs of the vessel rise like the skeleton of a sleeping whale, surrounded by the low-frequency hum of shifting tectonic plates. Every tiny fissure in the clay tells a story of incredible pressure, compressing the timber until the cellular structure of the oak nearly collapsed. A simple whetstone lies abandoned, left by a shipbuilder whose name is lost to history. Its granular surface perfectly untouched since the 9th century. The massive steering oar mounted on the starboard quarter is frozen in dried mud, never to feel the rush of the North Sea again. Microscopic flakes of rusted iron rest on a bed of blue clay, illuminated by sharp macro lighting, mimicking the slow decay of our own exhaustion. Fossilized leather straps, dry and cracked like ancient parchment, are tangled near the collapsed burial bed, holding the silence of a forgotten dynasty. The 1904 excavation extracted over 2,000 individual pieces of wood, which were later meticulously boiled in alum. A slow process of resurrection. Faint traces of yellow and black paint cling to a splintered fragment, preserved only because the heavy clay denied oxygen any chance to breathe. Let your mind sink into this monolithic darkness, where the only movement is the agonizingly slow decay of an iron nail turning to dust. Just as the dense blue clay sealed out the chaotic oxygen, let this silence seal away the chaotic thoughts of your day. The ship's wooden heart stopped beating centuries ago. Allow your own pulse to slow down, matching the deep rhythm of the earth. The surface above may be turbulent, but down here in the dark, the mind enters the restorative state of deep delta waves. Roots from ancient oaks reach down like dormant neural pathways, resting quietly in the cold soil without the need to process light. The heavy mast lies horizontal, releasing the burden of holding the heavy sail. Just as your spine releases the gravity of waking life, according to modern archaeological studies, the anaerobic environment reduced the decay rate by over 95%. Suspending reality entirely. Watch the microscopic dust settling in the faint beam of light. Each particle a fleeting worry, gently laying itself down to rest. The chemical oxidation of an iron rivet takes decades to complete. There is no rush here, no urgency, only slow time. Temperatures inside the mound remained a constant cool degree, perfectly matching the core temperature drop required for deep human sleep. An oar designed to strike water aggressively now knows nothing but the soft, unyielding embrace of the quiet mud. With every breath you take, the walls of the clay tomb feel thicker, insulating you from the noise of a demanding world. Even the fierce mythical beasts carved into the prow have closed their wooden eyes, surrendering their ferocity to the infinite dark. The memory of the crashing waves of violent storms in the North Sea, fades into a distant and meaningless echo. Tons of soil press down on the hull, acting as a geological weighted blanket, calming the nervous system, anchoring the spirit. You are safe within this airtight seal, protected by a millennium of quiet history, drifting closer to total and absolute oblivion. Forget the dates. Forget the names of kings. Just feel the profound gravity of 1,000 years resting gently upon you. The mighty oak strakes have surrendered their strength to the earth. They do not fight the darkness. They welcome it fully. There is no destination left to reach. No distant shore to conquer. Only this quiet harbor deep beneath the roots of the world. In this crushed and quiet chamber, the shadows stretch endlessly, wrapping around your exhausted mind like a thick, heavy woolen shroud. Allow yourself to sink beneath the surface of consciousness, sanding slowly through the soft, yielding layer of the ancient blue clay. The memory of the sun is gone, replaced by the deep, resonant comfort of absolute nothingness, holding you in perfect stillness. Even the wind cannot find its way down here. The silence is unbroken, heavy and sweet like the deepest stages of slumber. The iron rivets sleep. The carved beasts sleep. And now your waking mind is finally allowed to close its weary eyes. Time no longer flows like a raging river. It stands perfectly still, pooled in the dark corners of the buried hull. Surrender your thoughts to the suffocating weight of the soil. Let them dissolve into the damp earth, completely forgotten until tomorrow. Every muscle in your body uncoils, mirroring the soft, decaying timber that has rested without moving for over 11 long centuries. Drift aimlessly into the void, where history ends and the timeless expanse of pure rest begins to wash over you completely. You are safe from the waking world, sealed inside this quiet sanctuary of dirt and shadow, entirely hidden from the light. Let the final breath of the past carry you away. An old ship sailing smoothly into the endless midnight of your mind. Nothing remains but the dark. Sleep now, deeply and without fear, anchored forever in the quiet truth of the silent earth. Palynological studies of the Oseberg mound revealed microscopic pollen grains of meadowsweet, perfectly preserved in the anaerobic clay, untouched by the passing centuries. Imagine these invisible seeds suspended in the dark, just as your own quietest thoughts are now suspended in the safety of this deep rest. Fragments of the Oseberg tapestry reveal threads of imported silk, woven by hands that rested long before the modern world ever learned to rush. Notice how the tree nails, the wooden pegs holding the oak planks together, swelled in the damp earth, locking the ship into permanent stillness. The expansion of the wood fibers created a vacuum seal, a flawless biological mechanism that blocked out all decay and noise from above. Let your own breathing mimic this slow expansion, filling your lungs fully before releasing the air into the silent void of the burial chamber. A shattered shield boss rests in the soil, its iron shell slowly returning to the mineral state from which it was forged ages ago. The oxidation is so incredibly slow, it escapes human perception, teaching us the therapeutic art of surrendering to the vastness of geological time. Archaeologists discovered the skeletal remains of a peacock, brought from distant empires only to find eternal quiet in the cold Norwegian blue clay. The vibrant colors of the bird faded in the dark, just as the bright, demanding screens of your day now fade from your memory. The curved hull embraces the earth, acting as a heavy wooden cradle that shields its contents from the freezing winds of the surface. Feel the heavy sides of this cradle wrapping around your consciousness, insulating you from any lingering anxiety or pressure of the waking world. Every cubic centimeter of the blue clay weighs heavily against the timber, creating a deep pressure therapy that calms the central nervous system. The deeper we look into the microscopic grain of the oak, the more the world outside ceases to exist, leaving only pure tranquility. Breathe in the cool, ancien air. And as you exhale, let yourself sink another layer, deeper into the timeless slumber of the Viking earth. Archaeologists found the caulking between the oak planks was made of spun animal hair, soaked heavily in dense pine tar. This thick tar sealed out the cold, creating a perfect barrier against the chaotic currents of the freezing ocean. Imagine your mind being sealed exactly like this, impervious to the cold waves of stress, deeply insulated and secure. 5 enigmatic wooden animal headposts were found deep in the mound, each carved by a different master craftsman. Their silver-studded teeth are hidden by the darkness, their fierce expressions softened by centuries of unbroken silence. Let their ancient vigilance guard your sleep tonight. You no longer need to keep watch. Let the earth hold you. The massive side rudder was attached using a flexible withe, a rope twisted from the strong roots of a birch tree. It flexed with the ocean, yielding rather than breaking. A quiet reminder to let go of your rigid resistance tonight. Above the hull, thousands of kilograms of rocks and soil form an impenetrable dome, slowing the passage of time itself. The mound was constructed using over 3,000 cubic meters of earth, an architectural monument to eternal rest. Feel that immense, grounding weight settling over your chest, lowering your heart rate, pulling your brain waves into the slow delta frequency. A heavily rusted iron chain lies near the mast, its heavy links permanently fused together by the slow process of oxidation. These chains will never be pulled again. The tension is gone, leaving only the heavy, comforting slack of deep sleep. Drift along the quiet curve of the hull, surrounded by the fading echoes of history. Safely buried in the dark, the past is asleep. The present is silent. Allow yourself to dissolve completely into this vast, unbothered peace. The massive keel, carved from a single 15-meter oak trunk, once bore the weight of a 15-ton warship riding the violent swells. Now, it rests completely flat against the subterranean bedrock, transferring all that immense tension deep into the earth below. Inside the crushed chamber, archaeologists uncovered an intricately carved wooden bed frame, adorned with the skeletal remains of a sacrificed ox. Imagine laying your head upon such an ancient bed, letting the heavy timber carry the physical exhaustion of your waking life. Studies show the surrounding blue clay created a hermetic seal, dropping oxygen levels to zero, halting microbial decay entirely. Breathe out the remaining oxygen of your anxious thoughts. Let the hermetic seal of sleep protect your mind from the outside world. A heavily corroded iron broadaxe was left near the stern, its precise curvature perfectly matching the deep adze marks on the oak planks. The master shipwright set his heavy tools down over a millennium ago. It is time for you to set your own tools down too. An oak chest bound in iron rests in the shadows, once holding vibrant textiles and gold. It is now filled entirely with hardened mud, like this buried chest. Allow your mind to empty itself of all valuable worries, replacing them with the heavy, unthinking comfort of the earth. At the very center of the ship sits the curling, a massive oak block that absorbed the brutal shock of the wind-blown mast, just as the curling dispersed the violent energy of the storm into the keel. Let your bed disperse the stress of your day. The temperature remains perfectly locked at a cool subterranean constant, the exact thermal condition required to downregulate your nervous system into deep rest. A single drop of mineralized water clings to an iron nail, frozen in a timeless void where gravity itself seems to have surrendered. Sink deeper into the quiet embrace of the blue clay. Nothing moves. Nothing changes. You are safe in the silence of the ancient earth, deep in the belly of the ship. Archaeologists discovered over 2 tons of smooth river stones, acting as vital ballast for the turbulent seas. Let these heavy ballast stones act as a mental weighted blanket, pulling your restless thoughts down into a state of profound, immovable rest. Microscopic fragments of a heavy woolen sail were found nearby, woven meticulously on a warp-weighted loom, now unspooling in the dark. A sail meant to catch the ferocious gales of the Atlantic now lies completely slack, surrendering its tension to the motionless earth. Preserved in the blue clay are tiny wooden chips, discarded by the master shipwrights when the vessel was first shaped in 820 AD. The builders left their work behind at the end of the day, just as you must now leave your own work behind. The chemical breakdown of this iron rivet is infinitesimally slow, consuming less than a millimeter of metal per century in this oxygen-starved tomb. There is no rush here, no deadlines to meet. Only the agonizingly slow and beautiful process of returning to the mineral earth, Fossilized leather shoes were also recovered from the crushed burial chamber. Perfectly preserved by the highly acidic and damp anaerobic soil. The long journey across the freezing waves is finally over. It is time to take off your heavy shoes and simply rest. The towering curved prow points endlessly into the subterranean night, navigating a sea of solid earth instead of crashing ocean water. A single microscopic root hair hangs perfectly suspended in the dark, never moving, never needing to seek the light of the sun again. Let the massive ceiling of the burial mound shield you from the noise of tomorrow, blocking out the demanding light of the morning. Sink further into the deep, repetitive ridges of the oak wood grain, following their dark, hypnotic paths straight into the realm of sleep. The world above is fading entirely, replaced by the deep, resonant comfort of absolute quiet, pulling you gently into the endless black. The Gokstad ship was found with 64 wooden shields tied along its rail, painted alternately in yellow and black. Now, those shields are pressed into the earth, forming a literal wall between the sleeping vessel and the chaotic world above. Let this ancient shield wall stand guard around your own mind tonight, deflecting the sharp edges of your daily anxieties. Microscopic bands of iron oxide have bled into the blue clay over centuries, creating a perfect chronological map of complete stillness. This slow chemical painting requires absolute silence to form, just as your mind requires this quiet to repair and reset. If you look closely at the Oseberg wagon, you can see a tiny slip of the carver's knife, preserved forever. Even master craftsmen made mistakes, and the earth accepted them unconditionally. Forgive yourself for today's imperfections and just rest. The overlapping clinker planks created tiny ledges, where microscopic drops of subterranean condensation have gathered perfectly undisturbed. Watch the heavy drop of water, clinging desperately to the oak, before finally letting go and sinking into the dark mud. Feel that same physical release, letting go of everything you are holding on to, sinking deeply into the comfort of your bed. The sheer volume of the burial mound acts as an acoustic sponge, absorbing every echo, every vibration, every lingering fear. The skeletal remains of the sacrificed hounds have settled completely into the floor, resting faithfully at the feet of the past. Their loyalty remains unbroken in the dark, just as this silence remains a faithful guardian of your deep, uninterrupted sleep. The lines of the oak grain are beginning to blur in the shadows, losing their boundaries, merging entirely with the surrounding void. There is nothing left to process, nothing left to see. Allow the heavy blue clay to hold you in this timeless slumber. Archaeologists uncovered delicate fragments of diamond twill wool, woven on a heavy vertical loom before being surrendered to the damp earth. Imagine the tense threads of your own day, finally unspooling and resting gently against the soft floor of the mind. The massive weight of the burial mound presses down gently, acting as a natural gravity blanket across the shoulders of history. Deep inside the timber, anaerobic bacteria interact with the rusted iron. A chemical exchange so incredibly slow it almost mimics eternity. The heavy wooden ribs of the ship breathe in absolute silence, teaching your own chest to rise and fall with geological patience. Microscopic pockets of air have been trapped here since the 9th century, holding the perfectly preserved atmosphere of a forgotten autumn. The intricately carved runners of a wooden sledge remain frozen in the dirt, designed for winter snows but anchored now in clay. The journey is over. There is no more ground to cover tonight. Let the heavy runners of your mind sink into stillness. A single grain of quartz catches the dimmest sliver of light before the shifting soil swallows it back into the comforting dark. Time down here is not measured in minutes or hours. It is measured in the slow, imperceptible settling of the subterranean dust. Natural tannins in the oak timber fought off complete decay, preserving the core while the outer layers softened beautifully into the mud. Allow your rigid defenses to soften in the exact same way, melting seamlessly into the heavy, welcoming fabric of deep sleep. The damp earth maintains a constant, chilling embrace, signaling to the brainstem that the sun has completely left the sky. Even the fierce carved beasts of the ancient Norsemen must rest, their wooden eyes blinded by centuries of perfectly undisturbed peace. Sink into the dark, where every sharp edge of the day is worn smooth, and nothing remains but the quiet, endless slumber. 32 pine oars were discovered alongside the ship, perfectly carved to pull a massive vessel through the churning North Sea. Now, these long pine shafts are locked completely in the grip of the clay, their violent rhythm replaced by an eternal stillness. Imagine the synchronized breathing of the ancient oarsmen, slowly transitioning into the quiet, rhythmic rise and fall of your own chest. A tiny wooden bucket, adorned with intricate brass fittings, sits forgotten in the dark, waiting for water that will never come. The brass has darkened over the centuries, losing its bright reflection as it surrenders to the heavy shadow of the earth. You do not need to shine or reflect the world right now. Allow your own brightness to dim softly into the comforting dark. The master shipwright shaped the hull to slice through towering waves, but it was the deep earth that finally anchored it forever. Deep within the ship's framing, archaeologists found traces of animal fat, used to lubricate the mast. Now fossilized and completely inert, the friction of your waking life is gone. The gears of your mind are finally allowed to slow down and rest. Scattered iron arrowheads, heavily corroded and bound by mud, lay near the collapsed burial tent, their deadly purpose dissolved by time. The weapons of the past have turned to harmless rust. Just as the sharp worries of your day lose their power here, feel the immense, protective silence radiating from the thick oak planks, shielding you from the harsh currents of the modern world. Roots from the surface try to reach this deep sanctuary, but they are stopped by the freezing. impenetrable layer of blue clay. Nothing can reach you in this deep, quiet space. You are entirely insulated, drifting slowly toward the heaviest stages of sleep. Let the heavy soil pull you under, deeper into the warm, unbothered darkness, where history itself has chosen to sleep forever. The overlapping oak planks of the clinker-built hull were fastened with over 4,000 iron rivets, each one now slowly weeping into the soil. This slow chemical oxidization takes centuries to complete, requiring absolute patience. Allow your own physical tension to surrender to the mattress just as slowly. Within the crushed burial tent, fragments of a carved wooden post reveal traces of ancient soot, from a flame extinguished over a millennium ago. That final flame died quietly in the absolute dark, just as the bright lights of your day have finally been turned off, leaving only rest. Above the vessel, the massive weight of the burial mound acts as a thermal blanket, locking the temperature at a cool, constant 5 degrees Celsius. This exact temperature mirrors the cooling of your own core body temperature, a biological necessity for sinking into the deepest layers of restorative delta sleep. A massive oak rib, grown from a sapling hundreds of years before the Viking Age, now curves perfectly into the embrace of the dark earth. It holds the weight of the soil effortlessly, allowing you to release your own burdens, trusting the heavy earth to hold you completely tonight. Archaeologists recovered a heavily degraded leather satchel, flattened perfectly by the immense pressure of the clay. Its contents long since returned to natural dust. Empty your mind, just like this ancient satchel, releasing every memory of the day, carrying absolutely nothing into the quiet sanctuary of deep sleep. A rusted iron anchor rests near the prow, heavily corroded and permanently fused to the bedrock. Its voyaging days completely and permanently over. Let this heavy iron artifact serve as a perfect anchor for your wandering thoughts, pulling them down into the motionless depths of the earth. Every microscopic gap is filled by the dense blue clay, creating an acoustic void where no sound from the surface can ever possibly penetrate. Listen to the profound thickness of this silence. A heavy auditory blanket that insulates your mind from every distraction and every single lingering worry. You are perfectly safe, deeply buried in the quietest pocket of history, where time has stopped, and only pure, uninterrupted sleep remains for you. Geological stratigraphy maps from the site show distinct layers of turf, perfectly undisturbed since the burial mound was sealed in 834 AD. Imagine these compressed layers of soil as the heavy minutes of your own day, packing down into a solid foundation of absolute quiet. Microscopic analysis reveals that the lignin within the oak cells has slowly degraded, softening the rigid timber into something much more yielding. Allow your own rigid muscles to degrade their tension, softening against the mattress just as the ancient wood softens into the surrounding clay. In the darkest corners of the crushed chamber, Tiny fragments of a leather harness lie completely dormant, their purpose erased by the centuries. You no longer need to steer or control anything tonight. Let the reins of your daily life slip quietly from your exhausted hands. The 15-meter oak keel bears the immense pressure from above, distributing thousands of kilograms of dark earth evenly across its resting spine. Let the bed beneath you absorb the full weight of your physical form, carrying you effortlessly through the long and quiet subterranean night. A single grain of quartz sand rests motionless on a decayed wooden ledge, catching no light, feeling no breeze, simply existing in peace. Be like this tiny grain of sand, completely isolated from the chaotic storms of the surface, hidden safely in the deepest dark. Traces of iron-rich red ochre paint cling to a splintered shield, its vibrant warning colors muted heavily by the suffocating blue clay. The urgent alarms of your waking life are muted here, their bright colors washed out by the heavy, comforting blanket of exhaustion. Even the sharp scent of pine tar has been locked away, leaving a sterile, sensory void that asks absolutely nothing of your mind. Sink another inch into the absolute silence of the Viking burial mound, where time itself has laid down its heavy head to rest. Nothing to solve, nothing to remember. Just the slow, hypnotic rhythm of the earth holding you safely until the distant dawn arrives. Archaeologists sifting through the dark earth of the Oseberg chamber discovered a beautifully crafted wooden bucket, filled entirely with ancient wild apples, preserved flawlessly by the suffocating blue clay. These fruits of the autumn harvest surrendered their sweet energy to the dark. Imagine your own stored energy draining away just as quietly, leaving your muscles heavy, completely relaxed and needing nothing more. Alongside the apples, a scatter of imported walnuts was found. Their hard, protective shells softened by 1,000 years of quiet dampness. Let your own protective shell soften now. There is no need to guard yourself in this deeply insulated subterranean sanctuary. The massive oak framing of the hull curves around this chamber, acting as a rib cage that protects the sleeping history within. Every overlapping clinker board, every oxidized iron nail, works in perfect unison to hold the crushing weight of the earth at bay. Allow your chest to rise and fall with that same protective rhythm. Safe within the heavy, silent ribs of the longship, the blue clay surrounding the vessel is incredibly dense, forming a microscopic lattice that completely halts the flow of underground water. It is an absolute barrier of geological time, blocking the frantic currents of the world above from ever reaching down here. Let the heavy blankets on your bed act as that same dense clay, stopping the current of your racing thoughts completely. A faint groove on the ship's rail marks where a thick mooring rope once rested, worn deep into the oak by immense friction. That incredible friction is entirely gone now, replaced by a smooth, frictionless void where tension simply cannot exist. Drift further away from the waking shores, untethered from the heavy ropes of expectation. floating weightless into the midnight earth. Surrender entirely to the dark. The ancient timber sleeps. The damp earth sleeps. And now you are finally allowed to follow them. The towering stern post of the Oseberg ship features an intricate web of gripping beasts, carved by hands that have been still for centuries. These masterful carvings were meant to impress the living, but they were ultimately buried to be seen only by the unseeing earth. Just as this masterpiece was hidden away from the light, allow your own achievements and stresses to be hidden away for the night. Archaeologists uncovered fragments of a carved wooden chair, a rare luxury in the 9th century. Flattened beneath the collapsed oak roof, the royalty who once sat in command surrendered their absolute power to the simple, irresistible gravity of the heavy earth. Surrender your own need for control. Let the heavy gravity of the mattress take over every single muscle in your resting body. The iron clenched nails were driven through the oak with immense force. A violent act of construction, now completely frozen in perfect silence. That ancient force has completely dissipated, leaving nothing but a quiet, oxidized memory of strength that no longer needs to be maintained. Traces of down feathers from a luxurious sleeping pillow were identified in the mud, their incredible softness surviving the crushing geological pressure. Imagine the soft touch of those ancient feathers, letting your own head sink perfectly into the deep, yielding comfort of your pillow. A tiny pocket of frozen moisture clings to a dormant root. Waiting in the pitch dark without any expectation of the coming spring. Release yourself from the expectations of tomorrow. You do not need to bloom. You only need to rest deeply in the winter soil. The dark silhouette of the hull fades further into the absolute blackness of the trench, becoming completely indistinguishable from the surrounding heavy shadows. The subterranean air is motionless, perfectly still, carrying no scent, no sound, and absolutely no demands upon your weary and exhausted mind. Everything is quiet. Everything is perfectly still. Let the deep earth hold you as you drift completely and peacefully into the endless void. The tiller, the very steering arm of the massive longship, was detached and laid gently inside the hull. Its navigational duties completely finished. You no longer need to steer tonight. Let go of the tiller and allow the gentle current of sleep to take you entirely. The heavy wooden handle is now completely surrendered to the damp blue clay. Surrounded by the comforting void of the subterranean dark, the mound itself was built from thousands of stacked grass turfs and dense peat, scientifically proven to starve the internal chamber of oxygen. Each heavy layer of ancient turf acted as a natural dampener, suffocating the noise of the wind and the chaos of the shifting centuries. Imagine these thick layers of ancient earth acting as heavy woolen blankets, pulling you down into a state of profound and unshakable rest. Within this heavy soil, microscopic chemical reactions bind the rusting iron to the natural tannins of the oak, a process requiring immense patience. There is no rush in the dark. Time slows to a geological crawl, matching the deep and rhythmic slowing of your own exhausted heart. The osteological remains of the great draft horses lie completely still. The massive beasts who pulled heavy loads are finally permitted to rest. Lay down your own heavy burdens. The invisible loads you carry through the day no longer matter in this quiet pocket of time. The sweeping oak ribs of the ship cradle this silence, standing firm against the crushing weight of the earth so you can remain completely safe. Every single photon of light is absorbed by the dense, wet clay, creating an environment of absolute visual zero, perfectly designed for human sleep. The darkness here is not empty. It is incredibly rich and heavy. A velvety geological blanket that protects the mind from overstimulation. Sink deeply into the featureless void, where the ancient ship waits patiently in the dark, untroubled by the waking world above. Let the heavy earth swallow your final thoughts. Drift quietly, completely untethered, and sleep safely in the ancient silence. The master carver known as the Academician etched this intricate, gripping beast, his precise cuts now resting in permanent shadow. Follow the complex interlacing lines of the ancient wood, until your mind untangles completely and simply lets go. The heavy weight of the subterranean earth settles over the chamber, smoothing out every complex thought into pure emptiness. Microscopic analysis reveals sheep's wool coated in pine pitch, pressed tightly between the massive oak strakes. This ancient caulking formed an impenetrable barrier. Just as this silence forms a barrier around your resting mind tonight, the blue clay possesses an incredibly low permeability, locking the internal microclimate in a state of suspended animation. Allow your own body to enter this suspended animation, slowing your breath, lowering your heart rate, resting completely. An oxidized iron dog leash was left near the stern, its rusted links permanently fused together by the damp soil. There is nothing pulling at you anymore. The heavy chains of your daily responsibilities have finally gone completely slack. You are unbound, untethered from the waking hours, drifting gently beside the quiet oak ribs of the ancient vessel. At the cellular level, the oak timber has surrendered its rigidity, absorbing the heavy water of the earth over 10 centuries. Surrender your own physical rigidity, letting every heavy muscle melt seamlessly into the soft comfort of your bed. A perfectly still drop of groundwater rests on a buried stone, never falling, holding the pure essence of quiet patience. Sink past the edge of the physical world, descending into the velvety blackness where history itself goes to sleep. Nothing remains but the heavy dark. Breathe slowly. Release entirely, and drift into the endless comfort of the deep earth. The mast puckener, a massive piece of oak that supported the towering mast, is now completely unburdened in the dark, without the punishing weight of the wind and sail. the thick wood fibers can finally expand and rest in the wet clay. Just as this massive wooden spine has laid down its heavy load. Allow your own spine to sink completely into your mattress. Analysis of the surrounding blue clay reveals millions of microscopic diatoms. Fossilized aquatic algae from a long-forgotten ancient seabed. These tiny, intricate silica shells have been perfectly still for millennia, resting silently in the total, undisturbed darkness of the earth. Let your racing thoughts become just like these microscopic shells, settling quietly to the bottom of an ancient, undisturbed ocean. In the crushed chamber, a broken piece of a wooden loom rests in the dirt, its heavy stone weights scattered in the mud. The endless, repetitive work of weaving the ship's sails is over. The heavy stones have dropped, and the work is finally done. Your own work for the day is also finished. Drop the heavy weights of expectation and let the absolute stillness take over. A heavily rusted iron ring on the deck, once used to tie down cargo in violent storms, is now completely fused with rust. There is no more cargo to secure, no more storms to weather. The iron simply surrenders to the quiet dampness of the clay. Stop holding on. Release your grip on the waking world and allow the heavy, slow decay of time to loosen your tired muscles. The temperature remains perfectly constant. The acoustic dampening of the thick earth blocks out every possible frequency from the world above. Drift down into this absolute thermal and acoustic void, surrounded entirely by the profound safety of the heavy, protective geological blanket. The ancient ship slumbers deeply. The earth slumbers. Sink into the pitch dark and let the timeless sleep wash over you completely. Among the personal items found in the Oseberg burial was an intricately carved wooden comb, resting completely undisturbed in the damp soil. There is no more need to groom or prepare for the day. The heavy expectations of the waking world have been completely buried. Allow your own identity to soften and dissolve into the shadows. You do not need to be anyone at all right now. Look closely at the degraded pine floorboards. The tilfar that once echoed with the heavy footsteps of sailors navigating the chaotic seas. Those footsteps ceased over a millennium ago, replaced by the agonizingly slow and silent settling of the dark clay against the wood. Let your own heavy steps come to a complete halt. Lay down your weight and let the bed support your exhausted frame. Paleobotanists discovered microscopic seeds of common weeds trapped in the turf blocks used to seal the burial mound in 834 AD, locked in the absolute dark, deprived of sunlight and warmth. These seeds will never be asked to sprout or grow again. Release the pressure to constantly grow and improve. Tonight is only for resting in the deep, unyielding comfort of the dark earth. The massive oak ribs of the hull have gently warped under the geological pressure, bending with the weight rather than breaking. Allow your mind to adapt just as gracefully to the heavy silence. bending into the rest instead of fighting the exhaustion. The surrounding blue clay acts as a perfect shock absorber, nullifying every vibration from the shifting tectonic plates far below. Every tiny shock or stress from your day is absorbed entirely by the mattress, leaving your physical body perfectly isolated and secure. The deeper we sink into the stratigraphy of the mound, the more the modern world entirely ceases to exist. Close your eyes to the waking world. Let the ancient timber guard your sleep, drifting slowly into the infinite subterranean night. The rounded iron shield bosses mounted on the ship's rail were completely flattened, crushed by the slow accumulation of geological pressure. There is no need to maintain your defenses anymore. Allow the heavy weight of exhaustion to flatten your protective walls entirely. Inside the crushed chamber, archaeologists recorded a stabilized microclimate, where the humidity hovered constantly at 98% for centuries. This perfect equilibrium halted the evaporation of ancient moisture, freezing the environment in a state of perfectly balanced, unwavering preservation. Your own breathing is finding its perfect equilibrium, leveling out into a steady, unchanging rhythm that mirrors the quiet earth. The overlapping clinker boards are sealed so tightly by the clay that not a single draft of wind has disturbed them since 834 AD. Imagine a space where the winds of change completely cease to blow, leaving your mind perfectly still and untouched by tomorrow. Scattered iron nails, forged in the intense, roaring heat of a Viking blacksmith's fire, have cooled entirely in the dark. Wet soil, the fiery heat of your daily stresses is cooling down now, transferring its energy into the dense, silent void of the room. Ground-penetrating radar from 2019 revealed the ship's exact profile, confirming that the heavy oak keel remains perfectly aligned and unbroken. Your own spine aligns with the mattress, straight and supported, bearing no weight as the heavy blankets pull you deeper down, deep within the timber. Microscopic traces of beeswax were found, once used to seal and protect the vital rigging. That wax is now fossilized and inert, its purpose fulfilled, allowing the ship to finally rest without the need to hold together. Let your own thoughts fossilize and settle, becoming completely inert and motionless in the dark, quiet corners of your resting mind. The shadows are complete. The earth is silent. Allow yourself to be entirely forgotten by the waking world until the morning arrives. Surrounding the lower hull, a thin layer of organic bark was discovered, deliberately left by the shipwrights to absorb the ocean's violent impact. Now, that resilient bark is pressed tightly against the dark clay, having absorbed its final impact over 1,000 years ago. Your own physical armor can finally be laid down. There are no more impacts to absorb tonight. Only the soft embrace of the earth. Microscopic fragments of a shattered iron cooking pot lie near the stern. Its once roaring hearth replaced by the absolute zero of the mound. The heat of the day has completely dissipated, leaving a perfectly cold and still environment that invites the deepest stages of human slumber. Watch as a single grain of ancient soil settles against the timber, an imperceptible movement marking the passage of centuries in total silence. Let your mind settle just as slowly, dropping through the heavy layers of consciousness into the vast and quiet ocean of deep sleep, deep inside the clinker-overlapping joints. The original shipbuilders used a paste of crushed animal bone and tar to seal the smallest gaps. This ancient paste hardened into stone, creating an impenetrable barrier that held the freezing waters of the North Atlantic at bay. Imagine this dark trench acting as your own impenetrable barrier, locking out the noise, the light, and the endless demands of tomorrow. An intricate bronze buckle, once securing a heavy woolen cloak against the biting wind, is now completely motionless in the suffocating dirt. Unfasten the heavy cloak of your own responsibilities. Let it fall away into the dark. You do not need to carry it here. The grand silhouette of the longship is nothing more than a shadow within a shadow, resting endlessly in the belly of the world. Even the air down here feels heavy, perfectly still and undisturbed, acting as a gentle weight that presses your eyelids softly closed. There is nothing left but the dark. Surrender to the profound gravity of the earth and drift safely into the endless black. Archaeologists excavating the Gokstad mound discovered smaller, beautifully crafted rowboats nested quietly inside the belly of the great longship. These smaller vessels, known as fairings, were sheltered completely by the heavy oak ribs of the mother ship. Let your smaller, fleeting worries be nested away tonight, contained safely within the heavy, protective structure of this deep sleep. At the microscopic level, the soft cellulose of the wood has slowly vanished, leaving only a dark, rigid matrix of ancient lignin. The easily distracted parts of the timber simply dissolved away, surrendering completely to the wet, dark embrace of the clay. Allow the busy, easily distracted parts of your own mind to dissolve, leaving only the deep, foundational stillness of pure rest. A heavy iron cleat, once taking the brutal strain of the rigging, is now heavily encrusted with 1,000 years of rust. The tension has been entirely removed. The ropes are gone, and the iron is allowed to sleep in the quiet mud. Release every tight knot in your shoulders. You are no longer bearing any strain. The tension is gone. Seismologists note that dense blue clay acts as a natural dampener, absorbing even the smallest microtremors from the Earth's crust. Every tiny vibration from the shifting world below is completely silenced before it can reach the sleeping vessel. Your bed is that same perfect dampener, absorbing the chaotic frequencies of the day, isolating you in perfect, absolute peace. The shadows inside the burial mound grow thicker, heavier, pressing down like a comforting geological blanket over your tired eyes. The majestic prow of the longship fades entirely into the black. Its journey over. Its history suspended. Drift further down into the heavy, motionless dark, where nothing changes. Nothing moves. And sleep is absolutely eternal. Wooden trestles carved with intricate animal heads, designed to support a heavy burial tent, now resting perfectly flat in the suffocating mud. The heavy canopy they once held has long since rotted away. Their structural duty ended a millennium before you were even born. Dismantle the invisible scaffolding of your own mind. Let every tense framework completely collapse into the soft safety of the mattress. Inside the strakes, soil microbiology shows an incredibly rare state of stasis, where bacterial decay slowed to less than 1%. This profound biological slowing mimics the exact state your body enters during delta sleep. A deep, motionless repair mechanism. Allow your heart rate to drop, your breathing to shallow, and your energy to enter this perfect, ancient stasis in the dark. A rusted iron hoop from a forgotten barrel has slowly snapped under the weight of the clay. Its restriction completely broken. The rigid hoops of your own daily routine are broken tonight. There is nothing binding you. Nothing restricting your absolute peace. Let every mental restriction fall away into the deep soil, leaving only a vast, open space of total and profound rest. Microscopic spores of ancient moss cling to the upper strakes, surviving purely because they required absolutely nothing from the world. Require nothing right now. Ask nothing of tomorrow. Simply exist in the heavy, comforting blanket of the subterranean void. The massive shape of the ship is just a memory locked in clay. Perfectly still. Completely protected from the crashing waves. The faint edge of the wood grain vanishes entirely into the pitch black, crossing the threshold where sight is completely unnecessary. Your own threshold into deep sleep is arriving. The conscious world is fading out, leaving only the heavy, peaceful resonance of rest. Surrender completely. The ancient ship sleeps. The earth sleeps. Let the absolute dark hold you safely until the distant morning. A weathered oak gangplank was discovered beside the Gokstad hull. The ancient bridge between the solid shore and the chaotic sea. That bridge has been pulled away permanently. The vessel is now completely isolated in its deep subterranean harbor. You have crossed your own bridge tonight, leaving the waking shores behind to drift safely into the quiet dark. At the microscopic level, the iron rivets are undergoing a slow chemical reversal, returning to the raw bog iron of the earth. The metal surrenders its forged shape, letting go of the aggressive strength it took to hold the ship together. Allow your own rigid thoughts to reverse their tension, melting back into a raw, peaceful, and unstructured state of rest. The blue clay surrounding the ship is packed with glacial till. Ancient pebbles left behind by the last great ice age. They carry the profound chill of deep geological time, creating a natural thermal lock that freezes decay completely in its tracks. Let the ancient cold of the glacial earth cool your racing mind, lowering your body temperature for the deepest delta sleep. Every rough edge of the oak has been softened by the damp mud, slowly losing its boundaries in the absolute dark. The ship is no longer fighting the crushing pressure. It is simply yielding, becoming one with the quiet surrounding Earth. Yield just as completely to the mattress beneath you. Stop holding yourself up and let gravity do all the heavy work. The acoustic isolation here is absolute. A thick geological sponge that absorbs every single echo of the busy world above. Your mind is encased in that same protective isolation, perfectly shielded from the demands of tomorrow. Safe in the empty void, sink further into the endless shadows. Let the ancient timber guard your slumber, drifting quietly into the deepest night. Archaeologists recovered heavy ropes woven from the inner bark of linden trees. Completely unspooled and motionless in the wet earth, these bast ropes once held the immense tension of the square sail. But now they simply rot quietly in the absolute dark. Unravel the tight knots of your own mind, letting every tense thought fray and loosen until there is nothing left to hold. A small copper alloy mounting reveals a thick layer of green verdigris. A slow chemical patina formed over 1,000 quiet years. This beautiful green oxidation acts as a natural shield against further decay. Formed entirely by the slow patience of the unmoving soil. Let time build that same protective layer over your own exhaustion, shielding you from the sharp demands of the waking world. Every wooden wedge driven into the hull is locked perfectly in place, requiring zero effort to maintain its grip inside the clay. The ship no longer strains against the ocean waves. It simply exists in a state of perfect, effortless equilibrium. You do not need to try to sleep. Just stop holding yourself awake and let the heavy gravity pull you naturally downward. The dense blue clay has seeped into every single microscopic crevice of the oak, replacing empty air with heavy, suffocating silence. This geological embrace leaves absolutely no room for movement, no room for sound, and no room for the anxieties of tomorrow. Allow the comforting weight of the darkness to fill the empty spaces in your mind, pressing out all lingering thoughts and fears. The only sound is the incredibly slow compaction of the earth itself. A deep, low-frequency hum that soothes the central nervous system. Sink deeper into the velvety blackness, where the ancient timber waits patiently, completely untroubled by the passage of centuries above. The ancient vessel sleeps. The dark earth sleeps. Let the heavy silence wash over you and drift safely into the endless night. 16 oar holes line each side of the Gokstad ship, equipped with small wooden shutters to keep the freezing ocean out. These heavy oak shutters were closed perfectly tight centuries ago, creating a flawless barrier against the chaotic currents of the sea. Just as the ship closed its ports against the storm, you can now close your eyes to the frantic noise of the waking world. A simple wooden bailer was left resting near the heavy ribbing. A tool once used to tirelessly scoop out freezing seawater. The exhaustive labor of bailing the cold water is completely finished. The vessel rests dry and perfectly still in the dark clay. Let go of the need to constantly bail out your own rising anxieties. Drop the heavy wooden scoop and simply breathe. The overlapping oak planks were deliberately split from straight-grained timber, making them incredibly flexible against the crushing force of the waves. But deep inside the earth, that flexibility is no longer required. The wood simply accepts the heavy, immovable embrace of the dark soil. Release the tight tension stored in your own flexible muscles. You do not need to brace against any incoming waves tonight. Entomological traces in the clay reveal the exact midsummer weeks when the tomb was open, before the darkness closed in completely forever. The vibrant summer sun faded away over a millennium ago, leaving only this incredibly cool, eternal subterranean midnight to hold you. The midnight earth is your sanctuary. A quiet, unyielding vault that protects your weary mind from the blinding demands of daylight. Sink into the absolute blackness of the dense blue clay, where no photon of light has touched the wood for 1,000 quiet years. Allow the heavy, ancient silence to coat your resting body, perfectly sealing away the loud echoes of the past and the future. There is only the deep, undisturbed rest of the present moment. Sleep now, anchored safely in the silent and protective dark. Archaeologists uncovered a small wooden tally stick, bearing faint runic scratches used to count forgotten cargo or passing days. These ancient numbers have completely lost their meaning. The accounting of the past is over and the ledgers are closed forever. Stop counting the hours you have left to sleep. Let the numbers blur and dissolve into the heavy blue clay, a microscopic layer of vivionite, a rare blue iron phosphate, has slowly crystallized on the decaying iron hardware. This beautiful blue mineral only forms in extremely slow, oxygen-starved environments, demanding hundreds of years of absolute, undisturbed peace. Let your own mind crystallize into that same beautiful, slow peace, unbothered by the rapid decay of the world above. The heavy leather soles of ancient footwear remain pressed into the mud, perfectly frozen since their very last step. There is nowhere left to walk. The long and exhausting journey across the frozen northern tundra is completely finished, as the immense weight of the sail was removed. The cellular structure of the oak mast step subtly decompressed. Feel your own spinal column decompressing against the mattress, lengthening and relaxing as gravity finally takes over entirely. The dark burial mound acts as a massive sensory deprivation chamber, absorbing the last remaining echoes of your frantic day. A single, isolated drop of groundwater hits a patch of hardened pine tar, making absolutely no sound in the void. The silence here is not empty. It is a heavy, physical blanket that protects your weary nerves from overstimulation. Drift further into the deep thermal lock of the Earth, where the temperature remains incredibly cool and perfectly constant. The ship slumbers. The ancient wood yields to the mud. Allow yourself to yield completely and drift into eternal sleep. A master shipwright's whetstone, carved from fine-grained quartzite, lies buried near the crushed stern of the great vessel. It was once used to sharpen iron blades to a razor edge. But now, its abrasive surface rests completely unused. Let the sharp edges of your own mind dull and soften. You no longer need to be alert or defensive. Geological samples prove that the burial mound achieved profound hypoxia within weeks, stripping away the oxygen needed for biological decay. This profound lack of oxygen suffocated the microscopic life, leaving the timber in a perfect state of suspended animation. As you sink into sleep, your own need for oxygen drops. Your breathing becomes shallow and perfectly rhythmic. A fragment of wool, dyed entirely with ancient woad, has lost all its vibrant color to the damp, heavy clay. The vibrant colors of the waking world are completely washed out here, replaced by the soothing, monochromatic tones of the earth. Surrender your need for visual stimulation. Close your eyes and let the rich darkness of the subterranean vault wash over you. Tiny wooden dowels holding the ship's frames together have swelled from the groundwater, locking the joints into an immovable, permanent hold. The ship cannot move. It is locked perfectly in place, just as you are held safely and securely in your bed. Your muscles are heavy. Your limbs are locked into a comfortable stillness, completely supported by the dense gravity of the mattress. Down here in the absolute zero of the mound, there is no morning to anticipate, no alarm to disrupt the silence. The shadows stretch over the oak. The weight of the clay presses down gently, bringing an endless, comforting night. Let go of the light. Let go of the day. Sleep deeply in the ancient, unmoving heart of the silent earth. Inside the hull, thousands of square iron roves were hammered over the rivets, locking the sweeping oak planks permanently in place. These tiny iron anchors survived the raging Atlantic, but surrendered completely to the incredibly slow, crushing grip of the damp blue clay. Let your own anchors surrender to the bed. You no longer need to hold yourself together against the shifting currents. A delicately carved wooden spoon, crafted from soft birch, rests at the bottom of the burial chamber, its purposeful life completely finished. The hand that held it has faded into dust, leaving the simple wooden tool to slowly absorb the absolute silence of the earth. The need to act, to hold, to grasp. It is all gone. Let your hands fall open and rest perfectly still. The microscopic gaps between the strakes were sealed with animal hair, creating an airtight barrier that now keeps the modern world completely out. This ancient seal is flawless, wrapping the sleeping vessel in an acoustic bubble where time has absolutely no meaning or measurement. Your bedroom is now that exact same bubble, perfectly sealed from the anxieties of yesterday, protecting your mind as it powers down. Microscopic traces of silver inlay cling to a shattered harness, heavily tarnished and hiding in the profound darkness of the soil. The brilliant flash of silver has dulled to a deep, matte grey, blending perfectly into the heavy, unbothered shadows of the tomb. Allow your own bright thoughts to dull and fade, sinking gracefully into the deep, matte grey of an empty, resting mind. The heavy soil acts as a geological time capsule, capturing the absolute silence of the 9th century and holding it flawlessly forever. Sink into that identical silence, where nothing moves. Nothing demands your attention, and the earth holds you in a state of grace. The shadows are complete. The ancient timber sleeps. Surrender to the profound gravity and drift into the endless, comforting black. A massive wooden mallet, used to drive the heavy tent pegs deep into the earth, now rests abandoned in the damp silt. The laborious work of building and securing is completely finished. The heavy tool has been permanently laid down. Lay down your own tools for the night. You do not need to build, fix, or force anything until the sun returns. Microscopic particles of glacial silt have settled into the deepest grain of the oak, replacing all empty air with profound, heavy density. This relentless settling creates a perfect cocoon, wrapping the ship in a dark, suffocating blanket that entirely prevents decay. Feel the blankets on your bed acting as that same heavy silt, pressing down gently, keeping you incredibly safe and grounded. An oxidized iron ring, once holding the fierce mast lines tight, has completely yielded to the dampness of the earth. Its rigid circle has broken, blending seamlessly into the soft, unresisting floor of the ancient burial chamber. Let your own rigidity break and dissolve. Surrender your grip and simply sink into the deep, welcoming void. The temperature remains locked perfectly at 5 degrees, creating an eternal autumn that slows all biological time to an absolute crawl. Your core temperature is dropping to match this stillness, signaling to your brain that the day is completely over. Every muscle is heavy. Every thought has slowed to a halt, held completely by the immense, quiet gravity of the earth. There are no more images to process, no more problems to solve. Only the vast, featureless comfort of the subterranean night. The great ship vanishes into the mud, and your mind vanishes into the deep, restorative currents of pure sleep. Nothing left but the dark. The endless, peaceful, dark, Sleep now. Sleep deeply. Sleep. Microscopic threads from a vibrant, woven tapestry remain trapped in the clay. Their epic stories completely faded into the mud. The heroes and battles depicted on the wool have dissolved into the earth, requiring no audience, demanding absolutely no attention. Let the epic stories of your own day fade away just like these ancient threads. The narrative is over. It is time to rest. Deep within the lowest section of the hull, heavy, smooth river stones were placed as ballast to perfectly stabilize the ship. These heavy stones provided an unshakable center of gravity, holding the vessel steady against the most violent and chaotic storms. Allow the heavy gravity of your own body to act as that same ballast, grounding you perfectly, preventing your mind from drifting back to the surface. Trace amounts of ancient mycelium are suspended here in the clay, their biological networks completely halted by the lack of oxygen. The complex networks of the forest floor are frozen, just as the complex networks of your racing thoughts are finally shutting down. Disconnect entirely from the network of the waking world. Unplug from the noise and exist only in this quiet, isolated void, where an iron nail has rusted away entirely. It has left a perfect mineralized ghost of the wood grain in its place. It is only a quiet memory of structure, holding no tension, bearing absolutely no weight in the dark. Become just like this weightless memory, leaving the heavy physical tension behind, and floating effortlessly in the deep subterranean night. The blue clay forms an impenetrable shield, blocking out the sun, the wind, the rain, and all the anxieties of tomorrow. You are entirely insulated, perfectly safe in this subterranean cradle, wrapped in the heaviest, softest blanket of time. Sink further down into the deepest, dreamless delta sleep, where nothing moves, and the dark is perfectly peaceful. Hardened pine knots in the floorboards, the most stubborn parts of the timber, have finally yielded to the damp earth. They resisted decay for centuries, but the incredibly slow patience of the earth outlasts all resistance. Stop resisting the heavy pull of exhaustion. Let your most stubborn, lingering thoughts simply yield to the dark. A tiny piece of hack silver, a fragment of ancient trade and commerce, lies completely forgotten in the crushed burial tent. Its worldly value means absolutely nothing down here. The ledgers and transactions of the day are permanently closed. Release the heavy coins of your daily worries. Let them drop into the mud. They cannot buy you rest. The soil surrounding the hull has undergone profound compaction, pressing the clay particles into a dense, immovable matrix. This geological compaction acts as a massive, weighted blanket, evenly distributing thousands of tons of pressure over the sleeping ship. Feel your own blankets acting as that same heavy clay, pressing your tired muscles safely and firmly into the mattress. A simple wooden bowl rests on its side, cracked by the immense weight, holding absolutely nothing but the darkest shadows. It no longer needs to be filled or carried. Its purpose is complete, existing only as a quiet memory. Empty your mind just like this ancient bowl. You do not need to hold anything. You are allowed to be completely empty. The darkness here is absolute. A complete cessation of light that perfectly mimics the deepest stages of human delta sleep. Your brain recognizes this profound visual void, slowing the electrical currents, guiding you down into the subterranean night. The great ship rests. The earth holds it safely. Let the dark hold you. Sleep completely. Sleep deeply. A small, heavy soapstone spindle whirl rests in the dark clay. A tool once used to spin endless lengths of woolen thread. The spinning has entirely stopped. The thread has run out, and the heavy stone simply surrenders to gravity. Stop the endless spinning of your own mind. Let the tangled threads of the day fall away and settle into the quiet dust. Deep within the hull's seams, the sticky pine pitch used to waterproof the ship has become completely petrified. It is no longer sticky. It catches nothing, holding only its shape in the profound, oxygen-starved dark of the mound. Let your own lingering thoughts lose their stickiness. Let them harden, detach, and fall harmlessly away into the void. A heavy wooden sea chest, built to protect a sailor's most prized possessions, has been crushed entirely flat by the blue clay. It holds nothing now but earth and shadows. Its role as a protector completely erased by the overwhelming embrace of the earth. You no longer need to guard your treasures or your worries. Open your chest. Release your grip, and let the darkness hold everything. The ancient oak and the dense clay have become one single organism, sharing the same absolute, freezing temperature. They sit in perfect harmony, neither fighting nor resisting, accepting the timeless sleep that the subterranean vault provides. Merge with the stillness of your room. Become as heavy and immovable as the great oak resting in the dark blue earth. The blackness of the tomb is heavy, thick, acting as a perfect sensory shield that blocks the entire waking universe. Let the darkness shield you now. Slow your breathing. Quiet your heart, and sink effortlessly into the deep. The great ship slumbers. The earth holds it in eternal peace. Sleep deeply. Sleep peacefully. Sleep. The massive steering oar was bound to the hull using a flexible withe, a thick, twisted birch root that has finally snapped and unraveled. Without its binding, the rudder lies aimless in the mud, surrendering all control of the vessel's direction. Unbind your own need to steer through tomorrow. Let go of the rudder completely and let the dark current carry you. The heavy iron chain, once used to suspend a large cauldron over a roaring fire, lies coiled and permanently fused by rust. It no longer swings. It bears no weight. Its links have become an immovable anchor in the silent depths of the earth. Let the heavy chain of your own racing thoughts sink and fuse into stillness, immobilizing the mind for deep sleep, trapped inside the grain of the floorboards. Microscopic beads of pine sap have crystallized entirely, stopping their biological flow forever. The flowing energy of the tree is completely arrested, surrendering to the profound stasis of the burial mound. Your own energy is flowing to a stop. The adrenaline fading, the heart slowing, preparing for the deepest state of biological repair. A shattered bone needle, used to meticulously mend tears in the woolen sails, lies completely useless in the dirt. There is nothing left to repair. The work of mending is over. The vessel is perfectly at peace with its broken pieces. Do not try to fix or mend anything tonight. Leave the broken pieces of the day right where they fell, and simply sleep. The darkness is becoming thicker, heavier, acting as a perfect sensory sponge that absorbs the last traces of your consciousness. The great oak hull dissolves completely into the pitch black, carrying you gently across the threshold into dreamless rest. Let the ancient earth hold you. There is nothing left to do. Sleep deeply. Sleep peacefully. Sleep. Microscopic analysis of the mud reveals traces of pure carbon. All that remains of the massive woolen sails that once conquered the sea. The ship no longer needs to catch the wind. It has surrendered its powerful drive to the motionless, heavy earth. Drop your own invisible sails tonight. You do not need to catch the currents of tomorrow. Just let your ambition dissolve into rest, deep in the lowest section of the hull. The bilge where stagnant water once violently sloshed is now packed with dense, unmoving clay. The turbulent depths of the vessel are completely filled, leaving absolutely no room for instability or chaos. Let the deepest, most turbulent anxieties in your own mind be filled and solidified by this heavy, grounding peace. The carved eye of a wooden serpent, originally designed to carefully watch and ward off evil spirits, is now completely blinded by the dark soil. Its ancient vigilance is no longer required. The heavy earth provides a protection far greater than any watchful eye. Release your own need to be vigilant tonight. Close your eyes. You are perfectly safe in this dark, unmoving sanctuary. A faint, mineralized scar along the outer planks marks the ancient waterline, the strict boundary where the ship met the sea. That rigid boundary has been entirely erased by the dirt. The vessel is completely submerged in the deep, quiet ocean of the earth. You are crossing your own boundary now, sinking fully beneath the surface of consciousness into the dark, profound depths of sleep. The geological weight is absolute, pressing out every remaining flicker of light and sound from the chamber. The ancient oak hull fades into the eternal subterranean midnight. Resting endlessly, safely, quietly, nothing remains but the dark. Surrender completely. Sleep deeply. Sleep. Archaeologists sifting through the trench discovered a thin layer of white ash. The cold remnants of the final ritual fire. The flames were extinguished over 1,000 years ago, leaving behind an environment of profound, eternal cooling. Let the burning energy of your own day burn out completely, leaving only the quiet, cooling embers of sleep deep within the ship. The magnificent oak bedposts of the Viking queens lie crushed by the sheer weight of the blue clay. Even the grandest structures built for rest eventually surrendered their rigid form to the heavier embrace of the earth. Surrender your own rigidity. Let your muscles flatten and melt heavily into the mattress. A solitary iron cooking spit, once used to feed an entire crew, is now heavily oxidized and permanently anchored in the mud. Its purpose of providing sustenance is completely finished. It asks for nothing and provides nothing in the dark. You do not need to provide for anyone tonight. Your duties are suspended. Exist only for your own deep rest. Microscopic analysis of the soil reveals that the groundwater here has not circulated or moved for 10 centuries. It is trapped in a state of absolute, perfect stagnation. Shielded completely from the turbulent water cycles of the surface, allow your own thoughts to reach that same perfect stagnation. A deep, motionless pool undisturbed by any waking breeze. The vast geological blanket presses down, wrapping the mind and body in an impenetrable layer of dark, silent comfort. The last shapes of the world dissolve. The edges blur and vanish, leaving only the heavy, peaceful void. Drift safely in the ancient dark. Nothing to do. Nowhere to go. Sleep deeply. Sleep to hold the massive strakes together. The Viking shipbuilders used trenails, simple wooden pegs driven deep into the oak, over centuries in the damp earth. These pegs swelled and expanded, creating a permanent, unbreakable bond without any need for force. You do not need to force yourself to hold everything together tonight. Let the natural gravity of rest secure you perfectly, buried near the collapsed mast. A small iron oil lamp lies completely crushed by the immense weight of the clay. Its flame was snuffed out a millennium ago, resigning its duty to the profound and eternal midnight of the subterranean vault. Snuff out the guiding lights of your conscious mind. You do not need to see your way through the dark. Simply let it hold you. The geological pressure here is evenly distributed across every square inch of the vessel. A perfectly balanced, invisible weight. This heavy earth acts as the ultimate blanket, pressing down with a comforting, protective gravity that stops all movement. Feel the mattress rising to meet you. absorbing your body weight completely as you sink deeper and deeper into the dark. A fragment of ancient ontle, once beautifully carved into a comb case, is now porous and merging with the silt. Its sharp details are entirely smoothed over. Resting quietly in a state of absolute, unbothered degradation. Allow the sharp details of your own day to smooth over. Let them blur and fade completely from your tired mind. The darkness inside the mound is absolute. A complete and total absence of light that forces the brain to power down. The ancient timber rests. The dark earth holds. And the silent night stretches endlessly before you. There is nothing more to do. Nowhere else to be. Just the deep, unbothered dark. Sleep completely. Sleep. Archaeologists uncovered delicate copper folding scales, once used to meticulously weigh silver and gold. They rest perfectly balanced in the mud. No longer measuring. No longer judging the value of anything. Drop the heavy scales of your own judgment. You do not need to evaluate your day or measure your worth tonight. The towering oak mast. The vertical spine of the vessel was deliberately lowered and laid completely flat inside the hull. It surrendered its majestic height to the earth, finding profound comfort in lying entirely horizontal and supported. Surrender your own need to stand tall. Sink parallel to the heavy earth and let gravity hold your entire frame. A finely carved drinking horn lies empty in the dirt. Its hollow curve completely filled with the dense, dark clay. There is no more thirst to quench. No more emptiness to fill. Just the heavy, satisfying completeness of the earth. Empty yourself of all desires and wants. Allow the comforting weight of the darkness to fill you with absolute peace. Every piece of this ancient puzzle is locked into an eternal slumber, holding perfectly still in the crushing dark. The ship is entirely at rest, requiring nothing, doing nothing, just existing in the quiet void. Allow your mind to mirror this perfect, uncomplicated existence, floating gently in the subterranean night. The darkness here is an absolute shield, blocking out the frantic energy of the surface world. Your own room is that shield, sealing you safely away from the noise, holding you in complete, unbroken silence. Drift further down, past the edges of history, where only the deepest, purest sleep remains. A heavy bronze key, intricately cast by a master metalworker, lies half buried and completely immobilized in the dark mud. The chests it once opened have long since rotted away, leaving the key with absolutely nothing left to guard or protect. Unlock the heavy doors of your own mind. You do not need to guard your thoughts or protect your worries tonight. The builders sealed the great mound with dense layers of peat moss, an organic sponge that absorbs every vibration from the world above. This heavy layer of turf acts as a geological filter, ensuring that only absolute, pristine silence reaches the sleeping ship. Let the darkness of your room act as that same dense filter, absorbing the frantic echoes of the day before they can reach you. A single, perfectly preserved hazelnut shell remains tucked near the collapsed wall, an ancient offering of sustenance. It remains unbroken and untouched, because the deep sleep of the earth requires absolutely no fuel to maintain itself. Your own body requires no fuel right now. Release your cravings. Release your energy. Simply exist in the quiet stillness. A heavy iron anchor ring on the prow has completely fused with the oak, the rust bleeding into the wood grain over centuries. The ship is anchored not by iron, but by the immense, comforting weight of the geology that surrounds it. Let gravity anchor you just as firmly to your bed, pulling every muscle down into the soft, supporting layers beneath you. The deep subterranean night is flawless, an uninterrupted expanse of black that signals the brain to entirely shut down. There are no more shapes, no more outlines, only the vast, comforting emptiness of the dreamless deep. Surrender completely to the dark. The ship slumbers. The earth slumbers. Sleep deeply. Sleep. A heavy wooden spade, used by the original builders to pile the massive earth over the ship, lies broken and buried in the very soil it moved. The monumental task of digging is completely finished. The tool has been surrendered entirely to the dark. Stop digging into your own mind. Leave your memories and worries exactly where they are. You do not need to unearth them tonight. Scattered among the floorboards are rusted iron ice cleats, once strapped to leather boots to grip the treacherous, frozen fjords. Their sharp spikes are dulled and locked in the mud. They no longer need to brace against any slippery or dangerous ground. Release your own grip. You do not need to brace yourself for impact. Let your muscles completely uncoil into the soft support of the bed. Paleobotanists identified microscopic pollen grains of meadowsweet flowers, scattered over the burial thousands of summers ago. The fragrant summer has been entirely consumed by the earth, leaving only a perfectly sterile, dark, and silent winter. Let the bright, noisy seasons of your conscious mind fade to black. Step into the cool, silent winter of the sleeping earth. At the deepest structural level, the oak cells are gently flattening under the crushing weight of the geology above them. The wood does not break. It simply adapts, finding a new, resting shape within the heavy embrace of the dark. Let your body flatten and adapt just as effortlessly, sinking deeper into the mattress until you are perfectly held. The complete absence of light acts as a heavy curtain, drawing to a close the performance of the waking world. Your own curtain is falling. The day is over. The quiet earth welcomes you into the dreamless deep. There is nothing to hold, nothing to do. Surrender to the dark. sleep completely. Sleep. A pair of rusted iron shears, once used to meticulously cut the wool of the sails, lies fused shut in the dark earth. The blades cannot open. There are no more threads to sever. Their sharp purpose is entirely forgotten by the mud. Cut the final threads tethering you to the waking world. Let them fall away, leaving you completely untethered and free to drift. Microscopic remnants of luxurious eiderdown feathers, once filling the bedding of the burial chamber, are now compressed into a dense, solid layer. The softest materials have become just as heavy as the stone, yielding perfectly to the overwhelming gravity of the mound. Let the softness of your own bed become delightfully heavy, pulling you gently down into its dense, supporting center, a solitary bone-playing piece from a strategic Viking board game, rests abandoned in the damp mud. The game is over. The strategies have been entirely abandoned. There are absolutely no more moves left to make. Stop strategizing for tomorrow. Lay down your pieces. Step entirely away from the board and simply exist. The heaviest iron rivets along the ship's spine have slowly mineralized, bleeding their strength directly into the surrounding oak. The ship no longer needs iron to hold its shape. The earth itself cradles the massive vessel in perfect, unbroken stillness. You do not need to hold your own shape tonight. Let the mattress cradle you entirely. Release every ounce of tension in your spine. The clay presses gently. The shadows thicken into an impenetrable, comforting wall, sealing the chamber forever. Your mind recognizes the safety of this absolute dark, slowing down, sinking down, drifting perfectly into the void. Let go completely. Drift into the heavy silence. Nothing left but peace. Sleep deeply. Sleep. A simple wooden bucket, its binding iron hoops completely rusted away, has collapsed into a flat pile of loose staves. Without the strict tension of the iron to hold them together, the wooden pieces simply surrender to the soft earth. Let your own emotional containers collapse. You do not need to hold anything in tonight. Let it all spill out into the dark. Nearby, a thick leather strap that once fastened a heavy chest has entirely lost its rigid form. Softening in the wet clay, the constriction is gone. The chest is open, and the leather strap simply rests, unbothered by the passage of centuries. Unbuckle the tight constraints of your own chest. Let your breathing expand fully. Easy, slow, and unhindered. A tiny iron clout nail, completely surrounded by a cocoon of protective rust, sleeps soundly within the massive oak frame. This heavy shell of rust acts as an armor against further decay, keeping the ancient iron perfectly safe in the motionless dark. Your dark room is your own protective cocoon. wrapping around you, keeping the demands of the waking world far, far away. The pitch-black clay presses gently against the wood, filling every void, making absolutely no sound as the centuries pass. The massive shape of the ship is barely a memory in the dark. Suspended perfectly in a state of eternal, dreamless rest. Suspend your own thoughts. Let them hover and fade into the background, completely supported by the heavy, silent earth. There is no light left to see, no sharp edges to navigate. Only the profound and beautiful emptiness of the underground vault. The conscious world slips away entirely, returning to the deep, silent rhythms of the sleeping planet. Let the earth hold you. There is nothing left to carry. Sleep deeply. Sleep completely. Sleep. A tiny glass bead, once reflecting the bright Nordic sun, is now completely opaque, swallowed by the dense clay. It no longer needs to catch the light or draw the eye. Its brilliant performance is permanently over. Let your mind stop trying to catch the lingering thoughts of the day. You do not need to reflect on anything anymore. Over centuries, microscopic traces of calcium carbonate have leached from the groundwater, cementing the dark soil around the hull. This slow calcification creates a hardened shell, locking the sleeping vessel in an unbreakable sanctuary. Allow your sleep to solidify just as perfectly, forming an impenetrable shell that no sudden noise can break. A small leather pouch, once tied tightly with a leather thong, has entirely disintegrated into the wet earth. Whatever valuables it once held have been returned to the soil. The need to possess and protect is completely gone. Empty your own mind of all the things you feel you must hold on to. Let them slip safely into the dark. The immense weight of the burial mound has compressed the remaining oxygen to absolute zero, halting all biological time. The ship exists outside of time now, waiting patiently, undisturbed by the spinning of the planet above. Step completely outside of time yourself. There are no clocks here, no deadlines, only the infinite pause of the night. The darkness is absolute and unbroken. A perfect, heavy blanket that covers the eyes and soothes the exhausted brain. Sink deeper, letting the ancient, slumbering oak guide you further down into the subterranean quiet. There is nothing left but rest. Deep, profound, dreamless rest. Sleep. Sleep deeply. Sleep. A heavy anchor rope made of braided walrus hide, once incredibly strong, lies completely flattened and degraded in the mud. The strongest tethers of the waking world have broken down, leaving the ship entirely free from its obligations. Let every strong tie to tomorrow dissolve in the dark. You are not anchored to any duty tonight. Simply float away. Microscopic roots from surface plants tried to reach the ship, but died upon hitting the impenetrable. Oxygen-starved blue clay. The noise, life, and chaos of the surface are completely locked out, unable to penetrate the quiet depths of the vault. Your own surface worries cannot reach you here. They die away at the edge of sleep, blocked by the heavy, comforting blanket of rest. A piece of grey pumice stone, once used to painstakingly polish and smooth wooden surfaces, lies useless in the dirt. There are no more rough edges to smooth out. The work of perfection is over, and the incomplete remains perfectly accepted. Stop trying to polish the events of your day. Let go of perfection. Leave the rough edges just as they are. And sleep. A solid lead-sounding weight, once dropped into the ocean to measure the terrifying depths, rests at the bottom of the mound. It has hit rock bottom. There are no more depths to measure. Only the heavy, unchanging stillness of the earth. Allow that exact same heaviness to pull your body down, sinking effortlessly to the deepest, quietest level of rest. The darkness is whole and complete. A pure void that silences the nerves and resets the body. Everything is still. Everything is quiet. The ancient ship waits patiently in the unending night. Yield to the dark. Yield to the quiet. Surrender your weight to the earth. And sleep deeply. Sleep. A rusted iron handle, once used to carry a heavy wooden bucket, has completely disintegrated into a fine, dark powder. The burden is dropped permanently. The earth reclaims the metal, and the effort of carrying is completely erased. Drop the heavy handles of your own responsibilities. You do not need to carry anything anymore. Let it all turn to dust. At the deepest, most microscopic level, the ancient oak and the glacial clay become entirely indistinguishable from one another. The boundaries of the ship have melted away, becoming one vast, unified, and perfectly motionless entity in the deep. Let the boundaries of your own consciousness melt away, merging entirely with the vast, peaceful emptiness of deep sleep. There are no more artifacts to find, no more history to uncover. Only the pure, unyielding silence of the geological vault. The sensory deprivation is absolute. A thick, heavy blanket of nothingness that completely resets the exhausted nervous system. Allow the nothingness to wash over you, cleansing the mind of every lingering image, sound, and thought. The great Viking vessel has completed its final voyage, reaching the ultimate destination of absolute, eternal stillness. It requires nothing. It expects nothing. It simply rests, perfectly supported by the immense gravity of the planet. Your own voyage for today is completely over. You have arrived at your destination, a place of profound and perfect rest. The darkness is complete. A comforting, velvety void that holds you safely until the distant morning. Let go of everything. Let the ancient earth guard your slumber. Sinking deeper and deeper into the night. Sleep now. Completely untethered. Perfectly at peace. In the endless, quiet dark. Sleep. Sleep. Sleep.